It started with a scent that didn't belong to Sarah, or at least the Sarah I knew. She had her favorites, a light floral fragrance she'd worn for years and, sometimes, a hint of vanilla she'd add before we'd go out for a special night. This new perfume, though, was different, expensive smelling, intense, almost daring. It happened for the first time on a Wednesday evening. She came home late, apologizing with an easy smile that I'd seen 1,000 times. "Sorry, babe, the office just wouldn't let me go today," she said, shrugging off her coat. But as she moved closer, that new scent drifted into the room. I felt it hit me like a wave, a strange mix of something sweet and sharp, cloying in its intensity. I tried to push the thought away, dismiss it as paranoia. But when I leaned in to kiss her cheek, she turned her head slightly, and I caught her looking at me, just a flash of something I didn't recognize in her eyes. The scent hung around, mingling with our sheets and pillows even after she left the room. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a feeling in my gut I couldn't shake. The Sarah I'd married years ago was steady, predictable, someone who found comfort in routines. So why the new perfume? I told myself I was overthinking it, but a tiny, nagging voice refused to go silent. Then, one Sunday afternoon, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was face up, lit with a message. I would never have looked, but the name on the screen was one I didn't recognize, Marcus. My heart pounded as I glanced at the message. "Can't wait to see you again." I felt the air leave my lungs. Part of me told myself to put the phone down, to walk away, but my fingers moved on their own. The conversation was brief but unmistakably intimate, laced with emojis, lingering ellipses, and a trail of kisses at the end of his last message. Sarah came into the living room, wrapped in a towel, wiping droplets of water from her face. She froze when she saw the phone in my hand. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, lifting the phone slightly for emphasis. She stiffened. "Why are you looking at my messages?" The heat in my chest grew. "It's not exactly what I expected to find." "Who is Marcus?" Her jaw tightened, and she crossed her arms over her chest, defensive. "He's a friend from work. We talk sometimes." "Nothing serious, nothing serious." I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "You're really going to tell me that's nothing?" She exhaled sharply, as if she were the one who'd been wronged, as if my questioning was the true betrayal. "Maybe if you'd trust me, we wouldn't have this problem," she snapped, her voice rising. "I told you, he's just a friend." "A friend? You're really going to stand there and lie to me, Sarah?" "Friends don't talk like that." For a moment, she hesitated, her gaze faltering, and I saw it, a flicker of something dark and guilty in her eyes before she looked away. "What happened to us, Sarah?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper, the words dragging out of me like stones. Wasn't I enough? She looked at me, and for a second, I thought she might say something, offer some explanation that would make all of this feel less real. But instead, she just shook her head. "I don't know," she said quietly, her eyes cast down. "I don't know what I need anymore." I turned away, feeling my stomach twist. It was as if she'd confirmed everything without saying a word. The new perfume, the late nights, the messages, all the tiny signs I'd brushed off for months came crashing down on me. "Maybe I just need some space," she said, her voice a whisper. Her words rattled inside my mind as I walked out of the room, closing the door behind me. The night after I discovered the truth about Sarah and Marcus, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, the dim light casting shadows across the room. I could hear the rhythmic hum of the refrigerator, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. My mind raced, each thought circling back to the same painful conclusion: she had betrayed me. I couldn't shake the feeling of anger and confusion that surged through me like a storm. When Sarah walked through the door, her usual cheerful demeanor didn't match the heaviness in my heart. She dropped her bag by the entrance and smiled, but it felt forced, a mask she wore to hide the cracks. I glanced at her, my heart pounding as I prepared to confront her. "Hey, how was work?" she asked, slipping off her shoes. I watched her, trying to gauge whether she could sense the tension in the air. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady but low. I tried to sound calm, but I could feel my pulse quickening. "Sure," she said, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. She settled at the table across from me, folding her hands in her lap. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to say. "I saw your messages. The ones from Marcus." Her expression shifted instantly, the warmth draining from her face. "You were snooping?" she asked, a mix of defensiveness and disbelief in her voice. "I wasn't snooping. Your phone was right there, and I saw his name pop up. I read the messages." I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You said it was nothing serious, but it clearly is. You can't just dismiss it." "David, please," she started, but I cut her off, needing her to understand how deeply this hurt. "Please what? Tell me it's just a friendship. Because that's a lie. Can't wait to see you again." "What does that mean?" I felt anger bubbling beneath my skin, my heart racing with every word. "It was a mistake," she shot back, her voice rising. "It was just an escape from everything. You have no idea what I've been feeling." "Then tell me." I snapped, frustration spilling over. "What exactly have you been feeling?" "Because I thought we were happy, but I guess I was wrong. You've been hiding this whole other life, Sarah. Stop acting like you're the only one who's been hurt. You think you know what's going on with me, but you don't." Her voice trembled with emotion, and for a moment, I saw her vulnerability peeking through the anger. "What do you mean I don't know?" I pressed, my tone softening slightly. "You shut me out. You started staying late at work, coming home with that new perfume. Was that to impress him? How long has this been going on?" She looked down, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It started a few months ago, but it meant nothing at first. I was just feeling lost. I thought I could fix it on my own, by cheating." I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. "This isn't fixing anything. It's destroying us." "Maybe we were already destroyed," she exclaimed, her frustration boiling over. "I needed something different. I wanted to feel alive again." The words cut deep, leaving a painful silence in their wake. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand how much this hurt, how betrayed I felt. But I sat there, breathing heavily, feeling every emotion crash over me like a wave. "Do you even love me anymore?" I asked quietly, the vulnerability seeping into my voice as I leaned back in my chair, feeling drained. She hesitated, and in that moment, I knew the answer. "I don't know," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought I did, but everything's so confusing." "Confusing?" I echoed, my heart sinking further. "You've chosen confusion over our marriage. You chose him." "I'm sorry, David. I really am," she said, her voice cracking. "But I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I want to." The finality of her words echoed in the stillness of the kitchen, the reality of our situation crashing down around us. I felt a rush of anger mixed with despair. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I thought we built a life together, and now I was staring into the abyss of our unraveling marriage. "Maybe we need some space," I said, my voice cold, as I stood up and walked to the door, opening it to let the night air wash over me. "David, please," she pleaded, her voice shaking. I turned to face her one last time. "I think we both know it's too late for that." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, leaving Sarah alone in the silence of the kitchen, alone with her choices, and with the realization of what she had lost. Outside, the chill of the night wrapped around me, and I felt the weight of the betrayal settle heavily on my shoulders. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was just the beginning. I needed to confront the consequences of her actions, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for the fight that lay ahead. The weeks following the confrontation felt like a blur. The initial shock of Sarah's betrayal transformed into a cold determination as I moved forward with the divorce. I threw myself into gathering evidence, documenting everything I could find that would prove her infidelity and manipulation. Each text, each email, and every phone call became a building block in my case against her. I felt like a detective in my own life, poring over our shared expenses and bank statements. Late at night, I sat in front of my laptop, the glow illuminating the small kitchen as I meticulously organized everything. I thought about the life we'd built, the dinners, the vacations, the dreams, and how they all felt like a facade now, crumbling before my eyes. One afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer, Mark. "David, we need to discuss Sarah's response to the divorce petition," he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "What do you mean?" I asked, suddenly alert. "She's claiming financial distress," Mark explained. "She's requesting a larger settlement based on her supposed inability to support herself. It's a tactic to manipulate the court and gain leverage." I could feel my heart rate increase. That doesn't make any sense. She has a good job. I know she's been spending money, just not on necessities. I understand, but we need to prepare for her strategy. She might even try to paint herself as the victim in this situation. "You need to be ready for anything," he advised. "I'll do whatever it takes," I replied, a wave of anger washing over me. "She can't play this game and expect to win. I'll make sure the truth comes out." That night, as I sifted through our old files, I stumbled across something alarming. Sarah had been monitoring my movements. There were old text messages from a number I didn't recognize, all sent to her from an unknown source. It looked like she'd been gathering evidence on me, hoping to build her case against me. "Unbelievable," I muttered to myself, feeling a mix of rage and disbelief. I pulled my phone out and texted Mark urgently, "I think Sarah is spying on me. We need to gather evidence against her manipulation too." The next few days were a whirlwind of strategy. I met with Mark several times to plan my approach. I could feel a fire igniting within me, fueled by betrayal and a thirst for justice. As the divorce proceedings began, Sarah and I found ourselves in the courtroom, a sterile environment that felt alien. I watched her, sitting on the other side, her expression a mixture of defiance and vulnerability. I could hardly recognize the woman I once loved, the woman who now wore a mask of false innocence. In our first hearing, Sarah's lawyer, a slick man with an air of confidence, stood to present her case. "Your Honor, my client is facing severe financial difficulties due to the unexpected dissolution of her marriage. We ask for a fair settlement to ensure she can maintain her standard of living." I shot Sarah a look, and for a moment, her eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she quickly regained her composure. After the hearing, we found ourselves outside the courtroom, the tension palpable between us. I felt the need to confront her, to expose the truth behind her lies. "Sarah, how can you stand there and play the victim?" I demanded, my voice rising. "You're the one who cheated on me. You're the one who broke this family apart." She crossed her arms defensively, her gaze flickering away from mine. "You don't understand what I was going through, David. I was lost. I thought I could find myself again. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did." I shot back, frustration bubbling over. "And now you're trying to manipulate the court to get more money? This is your idea of finding yourself?" "It's not about the money. It's about survival," she retorted, her voice trembling with emotion. "You think this is easy for me? I didn't want it to end like this." "Then why did you destroy everything we built?" I pressed, the pain lacing my words. "This isn't about survival for you, this is about greed and guilt." "I didn't plan for any of this," she cried, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. Maybe if you had just been honest from the beginning, we wouldn't be here," I replied, my tone softening slightly. "But now you want to paint me as the villain. It's infuriating." She looked at me then, her eyes filled with a mix of desperation and regret. "I never wanted to hurt you, David. I just thought I could have both, a new life and the old one. I thought it could work." "Life doesn't work like that, Sarah. You can't have both when you've chosen to betray someone. You need to face the consequences of your actions," I said, shaking my head. As I turned to walk away, I could feel the weight of her gaze on my back. "David, please, don't do this," she called after me, but the resolve I felt was too strong. I was done playing games. I would gather the evidence I needed to expose her manipulation, to show the court who she really was. This wasn't just about the divorce anymore, it was about reclaiming my life and ensuring that Sarah understood the depth of her betrayal. That night, I stayed up late, combing through every detail I had collected. I couldn't let her win. I wouldn't allow her to twist the narrative in her favor. I was determined to show the truth, to expose the game she played, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. The day of the final hearing arrived, and the atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with tension. I sat at my attorney's side, the evidence I'd meticulously gathered spread out before me. Each document, each text message, was a reminder of the betrayal I had endured and the lengths I would go to ensure that Sarah faced the consequences of her actions. As I waited for the proceedings to begin, I glanced over at Sarah. She sat across the room, her lawyer whispering to her, her expression unreadable. She wore a tailored suit, a desperate attempt to appear composed and professional, but I could see the underlying fear in her eyes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it quickly evaporated. This was no longer about feelings, it was about justice. The judge entered, and silence fell over the room. I straightened in my chair, my heart racing as the judge took his seat. We are here today to finalize the terms of the divorce and settle the financial disputes between the parties involved, he began, looking over his glasses at us. Sarah's lawyer stood up, a confident smile on his face. Your Honor, my client, Sarah Turner, is seeking a fair settlement due to her financial distress following the dissolution of her marriage. We would like to request a larger portion of the assets, considering her current circumstances. I felt my anger boiling beneath the surface as I stood, preparing to present my case. Your Honor, if I may, I interrupted, my voice steady despite the tumult inside me. While my estranged wife claims financial distress, I have evidence that she has been misleading both the court and myself regarding her financial situation. The judge nodded, signaling for me to continue. I stepped forward, holding a folder filled with printed messages and bank statements. I have collected evidence showing that Sarah has been secretly spending money while claiming financial hardship. Furthermore, I have proof of her ongoing affair with Marcus, which she attempted to downplay throughout this process. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, and I could see Sarah's face pale as she realized what I was about to unveil. Sarah has not only betrayed our marriage but has also engaged in deceptive practices to manipulate the court, I continued, my voice rising with confidence. She has been maintaining a lifestyle that contradicts her claims of financial distress. As I spoke, I glanced at Sarah, who was now visibly shaken, her composure slipping. I thrust the folder forward, passing it to the judge, who began to flip through the pages. Your Honor, I said, the messages clearly indicate her intentions and the extent of her deceit. She should not benefit from her actions. I believe the court should reconsider her claims in light of this evidence. The judge nodded, looking at the documents carefully before addressing Sarah's lawyer. Mr. Davis, how do you respond to these allegations? Mr. Davis straightened, adjusting his tie as he attempted to maintain his composure. Your Honor, my client acknowledges the evidence presented but insists that it was a momentary lapse in judgment. She did not intend for things to escalate as they did. Momentary lapse or not, I interjected, her actions were deliberate, and she must be held accountable. As the back and forth continued, I could see Sarah fidgeting in her chair, her bravado crumbling under the weight of the truth. Finally, the judge turned to her, a stern expression on his face. Ms. Turner, is there anything you would like to say in your defense? Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Your Honor, I never wanted things to turn out like this. I made mistakes, horrible mistakes. I thought I could find happiness in a moment of weakness. I didn't mean for it to affect my marriage or my finances. But it did, I countered, unable to hold back. You chose to betray our vows, and now you want to paint yourself as the victim. This isn't about your feelings, it's about the reality of what you did. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks, and she looked at me with a mixture of sorrow and desperation. David, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could fix things. I didn't realize how far I had fallen. The judge's gavel struck the desk, silencing the room. Enough. I have seen enough. I will take all of this into consideration. The court will reconvene shortly to issue a ruling. As the judge left the room, I felt a swell of triumph and relief, but it was tinged with a deep sadness. I had fought hard to expose Sarah's deceit, but it felt like a hollow victory. I glanced at her, and for a moment, our eyes locked. In that fleeting connection, I saw the woman I had once loved, now reduced to a shadow of her former self. "David," she said quietly as we stepped out of the courtroom. "I never meant to hurt you. Can't we just try to figure this out?" I shook my head, the weight of her words settling heavily on my heart. "There's nothing left to figure out, Sarah. You made your choices, and now we both have to live with the consequences." As I walked away, I felt a mix of anger and sadness flooding through me. I had exposed her for who she truly was, but the ache of loss lingered. I would never again have the life we'd once built together. In the days that followed, the court ruled in my favor. Sarah's attempts to manipulate the situation collapsed under the weight of the evidence I provided. The judge saw through her claims of financial distress, ruling that she would receive a fair settlement but nothing more. As I packed up my belongings, preparing to leave the house we once shared, I took a moment to look around. Every corner held a memory, a smile, a shared laugh, a dream for the future. But now those memories felt tainted, stained by betrayal. I stepped out into the cool evening air, the door clicking shut behind me. I had emerged from this battle victorious, but I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that followed me. It was over. Sarah and I were officially separated, our lives irreversibly changed. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. I could finally start to rebuild, to move on from the pain that had shackled me for too long. As I walked away, I took a deep breath, knowing I would carry the scars of this betrayal with me, but also understanding that I had the power to forge a new path.